cloud product teams. We have four solution product marketing teams that really focus on solutions for our customers around data center, around cloud, around end user computing, and of course, or should I say digital workspace. And of course, the team that I'm on was previously security, but we have now assumed the responsibilities of also networking solutions, especially with our acquisition of VeloCloud, and of course, also security. So been with the company 3 years. Started off in EUC around, AirWatch security, helped launch the Mobile Security Alliance and the AirWatch NSX integrated marketing story. Then moved on to, talking about the EUC security, the whole EUC portfolio. Then moved on to talking about the whole VMware security portfolio when we launched this last year. And now networking and security. So yeah, the team has been growing fast, and it's been a wild, crazy ride in my 3 years here. In fact, I don't think I've been in a job for at least 1 full year since I've been here.
Oh my goodness!
I got to say that your industry or the space you're in, right, is kind of like the social space where we started out. It wasn't very popular, and it was a bunch of guys who were just hacking around, trying to investigate a problem and use technology to do something. And social, it was about pirate shareware, software boards, that kind of stuff. Then it turned into like real community platforms. Then it turned into like social media. Then it's a marketing platform. And I feel like I'm watching that transition from networking and security, where security used to be a bunch of guys that were hacking around trying to figure out how to break things and then how to secure things, and it wasn't industry standard. And then as we've seen this just mature in the last few years, it becomes real things that IT has to deal with. Right? It's real threats. It's become an industry, and it's become really critical to the way you deploy IT infrastructure. Right?
It's more than critical. Right. Every CIO I talk to, within the last year and a half, they tell me this story. They say when it comes to infrastructure, we have a budget. When it comes to cloud, we have a budget. When it comes to enterprise mobility, we have a budget. But when it comes to security, there's no budget. And I'm like, really? They're like, not only there is no budget, some of these decisions are being made at the board level, at the C level. Where typically would have been done by just some IT director. But that's how serious security is now. I mean, no one wants to end up on the 8 o'clock news that, right, another Equifax, we've been hacked, serious business.
So now you have a real career, right? You're not just on the fringes of things. You're like, it's legitimate, and that's been good for you in the ecosystem.
Yes, and fortunately enough for me, before my marketing career, I was quite a tech head. Still am. I started off my career in, tech support. Then I was an account manager. Then I was an engineer. Then I was a product manager. And the reason why I mention that is because I look back and I remember, just as you said, security and networking were, fringe pieces of the product. In some cases, it was an afterthought. Now it has to be baked in. It has to be intrinsic. It has to be automatic.
Integrated.
So you were part of the big wave where we shifted to solutions, right? I mean, I remember Carl or some of the people talking about it, and now we've come to that, and we've actually built practices around solutions. So talk a little bit about what is the solution? How many products are you engaged with, and then how do you engage with customers in that dialogue around solutions? How has that changed?
Okay, so I'll break it down in two ways. First, when we talk about networking, we're talking about our networking portfolio, which includes, of course, NSX SD-WAN, vRealize Networks Insight. And I mentioned that is because that is a key part of our security strategy. In fact, if you've seen some of the new marketing materials and discussions we've had and the launch of the virtual cloud network, you'll realize that networking is a key part of security. And the reason being is because networking is the only part of your infrastructure that touches every part of your infrastructure. If you think about whether it's, endpoint management, whether it's cloud, whether it's hyper-converged infrastructure, networking is the key component, one of the integral components to stitching all those solutions together. Now, when it comes to security, it's literally every product in the portfolio. I'm talking from Workspace ONE to vSphere to vSAN to vRealize networking site, login sites. And the reason is because we've actually been a key part of the security story in the industry. We just haven't been talking about it. And the reason being is you can't make infrastructure products and don't bake security into it. Not in this day and age. So it's literally every product that spans our portfolio.
Yeah, I remember in the early days of VI3 and 4, vSphere, when we announced that, security was, hey, look, you can deploy a corrupted VM, and now you're secure again, right? So we've gone from the fringes of security, offering you solutions to kind of post-attack fix things, to now actually locking down what VMs can actually do, and that whole storyline. So that storyline certainly has matured. What's the customer appetite for having these conversations? You talked about no budget, right? I assume we're starting to make inroads in the sense of you have to build a network. Now you can worry about security at the same time.
Yeah, well, did I say no budget or unlimited budget? Unlimited budget.
Maybe I missed that one.
One of the two.
Yeah, unlimited budget. It's interesting. So the things that our customers are trying to solve with regards to security is pretty simple. I'm going to break it down into like 3 simple things that our customers are looking for. One, they're looking to scale security. And what I mean by that is whether you're a mom and pop shop, whether you're a mid-sized organization, enterprise, or healthcare, you need to scale security for this new digital transformational era that we're in. Now, when we talk about digital transformation, everybody realizes now your data center is no longer inside 4 walls. Someone is not on a PC inside a building connected to an Ethernet cable that is speaking to that application server that's in the basement. If you look at this new ubiquitous IT infrastructure that we have, it's everywhere. Endpoints are everywhere. IoT is everywhere.
People are everywhere.
In fact, applications are no longer monolithic. An application on your phone, you could launch it, but it could be speaking to some resources in a cloud. It's definitely doing some computing locally. It could be speaking to a database that's on-premise someplace. So, our customers are looking to how can I scale security and insert it everywhere where my users are being productive. The next thing is that they need to modernize it. So when you look at how you have to modernize security, I always think, and, there's always some dispute in the industry around that, but I think there's probably around 5, 6, 7 key elements that you have to take into consideration. That's identity. Who the user is. Can I validate that they're the right user that is accessing the resource? Endpoint security. How healthy is this endpoint? Can I ensure that it has not been jailbroken, it's not been compromised? And when I say endpoint, I don't mean only mobile devices. I mean laptop, PCs, virtualized workloads, anything that an end user is going to use that's going to speak to some data center or cloud resource. Then there's the network. And this is a key piece because the network is the one thing that stitches everything together. How can you always validate and make sure that the traffic over the network is in compliance and that you can use it to bridge endpoint user identity policies with now infrastructure and cloud security policies? And then, of course, you have virtualization in the cloud. And the reason why I call out virtualization specifically is because if you look at how applications are delivered now, pretty much all of them are on some virtualized platform. Right. So if you could bake security into the infrastructure at that level, you can ensure that security follows that application workload wherever it goes. And then with the cloud now, as customers are moving, resources from on-premise into the cloud, how do you make sure that those security policies, that infrastructure is still the same? And that's what we've been doing as a company for VMware. We have a common architecture built around, hyper-converged infrastructure, the key elements being, vSphere, vSAN, NSX, and now you see we're putting that in, Amazon clouds. We're integrating with Azure. So, these are the things that our customers are looking for. How could they have that? How could they scale security? How could they have this modernized architecture? And then the last piece about security, which is absolutely key, automation. And an example that a colleague of mine, I remember when I started at VMware, a very good colleague of mine, we were working on the Mobile Security Alliance, and he indicated to me, what good is an error message in a log file if you can't act on it? And,
True.
and that's the key thing about security. How can you take that threat intelligence, those alerts, and how could you integrate them with action, whether it's from the endpoint, over the network, in the infrastructure, to remediate something, to shut down a virtual machine? And that's what we've been doing with products such as, Workspace ONE, NSX, App Defense.
I guess there's also a transition that's happening in my mind around security, where security used to be like, we want to keep viruses to come in to keep systems up and running, right? Because really the attacks of the 2005 to 2011 or 12 era was really about just creating havoc, right? Bringing systems down for just the mere fact of viruses that, do things. But now security has kind of transitioned into data compliance, right? Where you're really protecting data, and it's a data compliance, data security, because people are trying to get in and get at your data versus get at your systems and create havoc, right? So can we talk a little bit about the compliance space and what's happening around security and compliance, right? And the big dates that are happening around the Europe stuff too. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I can. In fact, you make a very good point. One of the key points that get lost with regards to security is it's really all about the data, and it's about securing the interaction from the user with data from the moment they authenticate from the endpoint all the way inside that data center repository that they're using. And if you think about it, that's what security is actually about. All these different interactions, from authentication to endpoint to over the network to inside a virtualized workload to the database that they're using. It's about securing that communication.
It's almost like protection. I always think security as like trying to keep the viral hackers out from just destroying things. But this is really about, that data protection and guarantee that data is secure.
And in layers too, right?
Right.
As opposed to the castle wall model.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that's actually driving a lot of the security conversations and what's happening in the industry around security is some of these regulations. Right. You see it everywhere. We've been doing it for a long time in the U.S. I mean, think HIPAA, think PCI compliance, so forth. But if you look at other countries, whether it's Australia, whether it's New Zealand, whether it's Canada, now Europe, this has become a major concern. And hence why you see coming May 25th, there's this new GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, that's going to be enacted over there. And one of the things to understand about that is that it's not only about IT security. Data protection it has to be a complete strategy, and some of it is about being legal, compliance, so forth. So it's definitely I would say IT in some cases is probably 20% of the work that has to be done with regards to compliance.
IT is completely woven within all of these systems, right? And
yes.
Especially with personal data, that's a big problem. There's an audit path and, where this data lives. And I mean, it can reach down into backup and disaster recovery, right? If that data is woven into backup and disaster recovery. I think I saw a chain on Twitter where someone was saying, "Ooh, we just got a request to destroy all the complete backup chains of this virtual machine because it contained, data that would put us at GDPR risk. So we need to completely nuke not just the virtual machine, but the entire data chain and backup chain for it." Right?
No, very good point. In fact, if you actually look at the articles of the GDPR, there's some key elements that they talk about with regards to data lifecycle. It's about collection, access, usage, storage, transfer, and deletion and destruction. And this is why when you look at security, it can't be a one product, one company solution. In fact, one of the things us at VMware are quick to point out is that, VMware is not saying that we're the end all be all for security. But what we're saying that we can do for our customers is help them simplify the way they do security, because we have a footprint inside this new ubiquitous digital landscape that they have that they need to protect. And when you look at that data lifecycle, there's a few things that you will need to do, whether it's identity management, whether it's application access, policy enforcement, data sovereignty, mobile security, network micro segmentation. And the thing is, when you look at the IT challenges that are presented with regards to data security or even GDPR that our customers are trying to address, you can literally map those to different products within our portfolio that address those challenges. And where VMware, in a lot of cases, differentiates itself is the fact that not only do we have these products, we have integrated them. For example, I'll give you a great point. You can use Workspace ONE on an AirWatch managed device. And if that device is compromised, you could say, you know what, I'm not going to give you access to that application. That application could be Horizon running on vSphere inside a data center, integrated with NSX. And it could be integrated with a third-party provider like Trend Micro. And if Trend Micro determines that via their antivirus scan that virtual machine is compromised, it could tell NSX and vSphere, you know what, let's shut off that virtual machine, let's deprovision it. And because we have the vRealize suite of products, we could orchestrate creating a new VM and putting it in its place. You see, that's what security should actually look like. It should be automatic and it should be integrated. But I think, or one of our COO says this, but Sanjay Poonen, we're kind of like the Switzerland. It's not only about VMware. You know, we integrate with, you know, some of the top security partners like Trend Micro, like Palo Alto Networks. That's what security should look like. All these different components working in conjunction with each other to secure that data lifecycle, whether it's from the user access all the way down inside the data center.
It sounds complicated. I mean, I know that it is complicated, but I remember that, you know, back in the day, we would always say, well, there's no product that, you know, gives you a PCI checkbox or a HIPAA checkbox. There's no product that gives you a GDPR checkbox, is there? I mean, it's a process.
It's a process. That is correct. In fact, you know, when a lot of customers do their security assessments, what they find out is, you know, you may be bombarded with, hey, here are 500 products that you can use to solve this problem. But hey, these are the challenges you need to solve. If you use some of the key foundational elements that, you know, can be delivered by, say, a VMware and then some from other companies, you can create a more simplified way, a consolidated way of handling security. And one of the challenges is that IT is fragmented. You know, you go out there and you speak to these IT departments and, you know, you have the application guy and infrastructure guy and the networking guy. They're not on the same page when it comes to security. And that's why the security conversation now is happening at a much higher level, because organizations realize we can't have different parts of IT buying different products and solutions that don't work together. It has to be integrative and a cohesive solution.
There's a danger there too, right? We can say today, hey, there's these three silos that aren't talking to each other. We're going to create an overlay organization. And then what you actually create is a fourth silo. Right?
True indeed.
It requires organizational change too, not just like a product fit or like a kind of low-level coordination between three disparate groups that aren't talking to each other really until the very end.
So I have a question. In my mind, virtualization, when we virtualized things back in 2008 or whatever, when it went through the industry, we actually saw kind of like a 20x speed improvement. We also saw a time to market improvement, and that was an industry trend that happened because virtualization basically enabled that bump, because you took CPUs that were only 5% utilized and you 100% utilized them, which gave us the Moore's law curve of a jump up, right? And it also helped in speed of deployment of applications and solutions and that kind of stuff. I see the data compliance and security trends, right, almost taking a step backwards, where we have to actually, you know, work at building a secure, safe infrastructure for data now, where we kind of went through the heyday of it all virtualized and all this data came online and we saw the explosion of what you could accomplish. Do you see a trend here where, you know, IT professionals are going to have to step back now and actually, it's almost like a slowdown, right, where a speed bump where you actually have to worry about, data compliance and security, and there's extra work involved in doing that. But then, much like virtualization, where we absorbed that 20x and then we kind of went on business as usual, do you see kind of like the industry absorb this, figure out how to do this, get the software in place, and then it just becomes standard, and we can get back to the innovation and speed of which we've always done things? So I see this as like maybe a couple year trend where everybody gets solutions in place, but then once you have it, it's there, and it just becomes standard routine operational practice.
No, yes, in fact, you make a very good point. The balance between security and productivity is very tough. In fact, I'll pose a question to you guys. What's the most secure phone ever built on the face of this planet?
It's probably like those dumb flip phones, right?
I don't know.
It's a BlackBerry.
Okay.
But guess what? If you look at what happened to it when Apple came out with an iPhone,
Right.
Apple decimated it. And the reason being is Apple figured out a way, how do we balance the user experience with security? And it's the same thing for every security solution. There's a story, an analogy I normally give when I talk to customers. In fact, I actually did this at last VMware. Security is kind of like the movie Minority Report. And if you've ever seen the movie Minority Report,
Sure.
if you remember Tom Cruise, he had access to data when he was at work at his fingertips. When he was mobile in his car, same level of access. He was using biometric, federated identity to give him access to stuff. Same thing when he was home. But when he became out of compliance, he literally had to jump out of moving cars. He had to go change his eyes. And that's how security has to be. It has to be everywhere. In fact, what every organization is looking for is that quick time to value. It can't be a cumbersome process. So
Right.
how do you make security inserted everywhere but make it automatic? And, one of the things I tell my friends is, if you look at products such as Workspace ONE and see how it works on a Windows 10 device, where Workspace ONE is actually using facial recognition to actually give me access to my applications, that's the future of security. To me, I think going 10, 20 years from now, we probably won't have passwords. It will be all biometric, facial identity, fingerprint. That's how easy security has to be. And that security then, of course, has to be at, every different layer of your IT infrastructure, so that if you're out of compliance, it can revoke and you can automatically recover for it. And that's why how fragmented the industry is now, or solutions that customers have implemented. Yeah, it's a turning point now. It's a large learning curve, but I think everyone realizes that for security and productivity and business agility to work together, you will have to consolidate security, and you will have to have solutions that actually work together, have contextual information of what the end user is doing and how that maps to the infrastructure itself.
All right, so we're a community podcast. So you want to add something to it?
No, go ahead.
All right, so we're a community podcast. How would you assess us in real terms, like in honest terms?
Uh-huh.
How are we doing on integration across all of our products from a solutions, heterogeneous integrated solution that actually I don't have to spend a lot of time figuring out how to make work?
No, well, there's always work to do. There's always room for improvement, but one of the things that differentiates VMware from almost every other company in the industry is the breadth of our portfolio when it comes to software. If you remember earlier, I mentioned that if you look at security, there's some key elements to it. There is identity, there's endpoint, there's IoT, there's networking, there's infrastructure, there's cloud. And if you think about it, you have to own some of that space. You have to have a footprint into some of that space to make security effective. Say, for example, let's say you're a company that only does networking security.
Right.
How can you shut off an endpoint from behaving improperly or that's been compromised? You're just networking. You can just shut off communication. That's what we've done very differently. If you look at some of the analyst reports, one of the biggest things that the industry is trying to do now is how do they integrate endpoint analytics with networking, analytics, and security. And that's what we've done with products such as, Workspace ONE and the integration with NSX. What we've literally done is we've give you the ability to sync an endpoint policy with a networking policy. And if that becomes out of compliance, perform an automated action. And trust me, we, as with it, most companies in the industry, we have ways to go, but we're ahead of the curve.
Right.
As I gave you that example with, Workspace ONE on an AirWatch device, connecting to a Horizon VDI, running on vSphere, that works right now. That is actually technology that our customers can implement today.
Right. We also have like an entire business unit, integrated systems, that's working to basically coordinate with all of the other product business units to automate the complexity of those things, right? The full life cycle complexity of standing up, maintaining, and shutting down a full software-defined data center, right? And right now it might be vSphere, vSAN, and NSX, compute, storage, and networking, but we want to include the management, include the audit logs, include the security, for the full breadth and for the full life cycle of the entire software-defined data center. So unless, I think, to your point, you own that end-to-end, right, and you can stand up and control everything end-to-end, how you have to work with other partners, and we have to work with other partners, even owning all that stuff end to end, right? There's just incumbents that are lifetimes ahead of us, right?
That is true. So here's what we have. We have the infrastructure, the software-defined infrastructure, and what we do with partners like Palo Alto Networks is we take all that threat intelligence that they've been experts at, and we unify that with the infrastructure. And those are some of the things that has to be done with regards to, efficient IT security and cybersecurity. So, and that's why I continue to say this. The one thing VMware is always clear to state is, look, we don't think we're the end-all be-all for security, but we can help our customers simplify the way they execute that security strategy, because we have some of the key components that anyone is going to deploy in their digital enterprise.
I mean, that's true across our entire product portfolio, right? We don't say we have the be-all end-all of all storage, right? There's room for storage partners and storage vendors. We don't say that we have the be-all end-all for compute. We do a really good job with x86, but there's stuff that you need PowerPC for. There's stuff that you need mainframes for, and we work with those partners to make those things integrated into our ecosystem, not take over everything.
That's in fact, vSAN is a perfect example of that. One of the things that vSAN has really done is integrated with what we call key management providers, and what that means is that you can now self-encrypt and crypt a virtualized hard drive. Typically, in the past, before you would have to do that physically. Now, keep in mind, hardware changes on a regular basis. So now you have to manage procurement of, a self-encrypting hard drive, integrate that with some key management, so forth. When you're doing it in software, it's automatic. You can do it across. You don't have to worry about what type of physical hard drive is, because you're doing it at the virtualization level. So, and then you could pick any key management integrated partner you want to utilize. You don't have to be stuck with using it for a specific hard drive. And those are the things we're doing. And because we're doing it in this software-defined world, it gives us a lot more agility than is typically out there that can be done on just hardware.
Okay, so I'll switch gears and say, any spectacular fails do you want to tell us about? Or any good anecdotal stories of people that did it wrong out in the world? And if not, then I'll jump to my next question. But I thought I would throw that out there. And what storytelling can you tell us from a standpoint of security? I always wonder that, because nobody wants to talk about failures because it's security and data protection. So then we don't hear. So then I wonder if there just aren't any failures, other than maybe once in a while, one a year goes on the news, like something happened, they lost a bunch of data, credit cards, and so forth. But any other things you've heard of?
I mean, The stories are so numerous that they're,
You're not allowed to talk about them, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't. Well, let's talk about some of the public ones. Equifax is a big one. What caused the Equifax breach, believe it or not, is a patch. They weren't able to patch servers in a timely fashion. But guess what? As someone who started off my career in the IT industry, you can't just patch servers. Anyone who works in IT, whether it's tech support, will tell you that you could patch something and then your infrastructure could be down for weeks, months. You have to test patches, see how they work. So this goes back to why our strategy is that security can't be focused in one area.
Just on OS, you have to.
It has to be in multiple places because an IT infrastructure is there's one size doesn't fit all. It's always growing. There's always change. A lot of companies are using different types and different components, and that is why you have to focus on what we think are some of the key elements. Which is whether it's identity, whether it's encryption, whether it's virtualization, whether it's automation, and create this cohesive strategy. Because if you're relying on the ability to patch servers, for example, that's where you're open up yourself to attacks. In fact, there's one very public official who no longer works for the U.S. government. He was actually an FBI director. 3 or 4 years ago, he indicated that this is how serious it is. He says that every Fortune 500 company is probably is under cyber attack every day. There's someone trying to infiltrate them, and they either fall into two categories. Either they've been hacked and they don't know it, or they've been hacked and they know it, and they've solved the problem.
Right.
And I've added one thing to that statement to say that if you're a company and you're not the target of a cyber attack, the serious problem is that you're probably not relevant enough to be the target of a cyber attack.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Right.
Because it used to be, to Eric's point, it used to be about mayhem and havoc, right? But now there's like legitimate, expensive intellectual property that's valuable out in the open marketplace that can, people will target and steal. So if nobody's trying to steal your intellectual property, then it might not be worth anything.
And it's not only that. There are hackers now that are doing it for what they call civic reasons. They want to expose data because they feel that a company may be using someone's data incorrectly, or that,
or even the YouTube guys, right, who just don't like the policies of a company. They're angry that they've cut them out of some ad revenue. So, now you have a computer, you can do some work. Right?
Exactly.
Right. Seek revenge. Hacktivism. Somebody in chat says, Graham says hacktivism, so that makes sense.
That is actually the exact terminology for it.
All right, my next question, because we only have 9 minutes left, so I'll hit you with that. AWS, right? We always talk about Amazon Web Services and how we're integrating, and what does this mean from an AWS perspective? And are people that are running things out on AWS, are they vulnerable? I suppose they're as vulnerable as everybody that's running in a data center. Are there any unique hybrid kind of things to worry about when we're talking about security? Obviously, you can run NSX across and do the hybrid cloud from our perspective. Any learnings that you've been exposed to when you're considering moving workloads to AWS?
Well, the good thing is those platforms, whether it's AWS, Azure, and so forth, those guys have a lot of built-in, infrastructure security. But what makes the work that we're doing very compelling with companies like AWS is that in the past, if you were moving a workload to the cloud, and let's just say that workload was PCI compliant, and now you're going to move that, application to the cloud, you literally had to start from scratch again. You had to re-architect that security infrastructure because the components that you were going to have in the cloud were going to be different. Now, this is one of the things that we're fundamentally changing for our customers. It's not only about, ease of moving that resource, automation, hybrid cloud integration. Security is a key component of that because now if you're an organization, you don't have to re-architect that workload. The key element of that infrastructure is what we call our hyper-converged infrastructure, and that's made up of, vSphere, NSX, and vSAN. And now that you can move that infrastructure and run it on top of AWS, it means that you don't have to have a PCI compliant security policies for your on-premise infrastructure and then you have to re-architect that same sort of policy and infrastructure for that resource that you have in the cloud. So, one of the things that does is, makes administration a lot easier, makes security simpler, so forth. So those are some of the things, the unintended benefits that we're seeing from, working with, partners such as Amazon.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do run some stuff on AWS native, right, where I'm not engaged with vSphere, nothing, and I think that's going to come back to haunt me, right? In that as you start to really deal with security and encryption and that, if you have that platform that's already there, right, if you're on top of VMware, just makes it easier to deal with both sides of the house.
Yeah. You almost have to get spun up on a whole new set of tools and policies. I know it seems to be a recurring theme that every month or so there's some data breach, and it's like, hey, you put a bunch of stuff on S3 storage, and somebody fundamentally misunderstood what kind of security policies they needed to wrap around their S3 storage, and they just left it wide open for anybody to look at and read.
I think my strategy is just not to be important. I think you hit on it. Just don't be an important company anymore, right? Just stay below the radar, and you don't have to worry about it so much.
That could be one strategy.
Sleep as well. You've got 2018 going on. We're at the end of Q1. We're going into Q2 now, or we're in Q2. What's your calendar look like? What do you try to do? What's your objectives? Just get the word out. What are you doing, Christopher? And how can the community help you be successful?
Well, one of the things that we've recently launched is the Virtual Cloud Network. And I know I keep going back to networking, but networking is really one of the key parts of our security strategy. You'll see some of the innovations that we've come up with, such as NSXT. What's key about that is that it's not NSX that only works on vSphere. It's NSX that works on different hypervisors. So as you can see, that strategy of being inclusive and being that Switzerland-like is really key, not only for us, but for our customers to, adopt the technology that we have. So we've launched a virtual cloud network. It's really going to be a key part of the way we talk about security. And, as we, progress and go into the end of the year, we're definitely going to be talking about app defense, of course, a lot more. For those who are not familiar with App Defense, it's our product that secure virtualized workloads. And we've literally turned security on its head there. In fact, if you look at the way how security is done for most products, it's we have a whole bunch of history and data of bad signatures out there, and we compare them to activity that's happening inside the infrastructure. What App Defense is doing, it's taking a look at your how good behavior is supposed to look like, and if you deviate from that, then we realize that something is not performing correctly inside the environment. So, you'll see us talking a lot about App Defense, NSX, NSXT, and then of course that new acquisition, VeloCloud, which we've rebranded NSX SD-WAN by VeloCloud, and how we can bridge that software-defined security not to the branch offices and out to the edge. IoT security is big. Like if you check any newsrooms, any security, conferences, articles, IoT security is a big issue. And the reason it is, in fact, I had to explain it to my wife this way. She was asking me, I don't understand this whole IoT security concept. So I told her, see that refrigerator we have? She's like, yeah. I'm like, it could compromise the security in our house. And she goes, how so? And I'm like, because we wanted to buy this refrigerator that has this nice little panel that could tell us what's going on it. And, we could pull it up on our phone and see what's going on inside the refrigerator. It's considered an IoT device. Now, it's speaking to some cloud resource over some network that we don't know how secure it is.
Right.
And now, if that gets compromised, every tablet that our kids have or every PC that we have inside our house, that refrigerator can have access to it. And that's one of the big things going on in IoT. If you listen to Ray O'Farrell, talk about IoT, one of the things I was even amazed to learn is that we have sensors that the government has buried in the ground for 10 years ago that they don't have a lot of built-in security around. So how do you manage and secure that? And
Right.
we're looking to help some of our customers and organizations do that. So you'll see a lot of stuff on IoT security also, especially around NSX SD-WAN.
IoT inside the four walls of the house is a big scare factor. I'm a little bit more concerned about parking meters personally. When I go, I want to be charged 75 cents, which is what I'm supposed to be charged. But if it charges me $75, then that's a big problem. If it charges me $7,500 for parking, then that's even worse, right?
True.
And that can hit my pocketbook tomorrow. So I don't have an internet refrigerator, but maybe I need one. You tell me.
Christopher Campbell, you got a Twitter handle?
Yes, it's at ChrisLCampbell.
At ChrisLCampbell.
And you'll see me ranting on there all the time about cybersecurity.
CAMPBELL?
Yes, so at Chris, CHRIS, Campbell, CAMPBELL.
All right, if you listen to this, you should go give him a follow. Pick up your phone, give him a follow. Fun guy to talk to. Thanks for coming on the show, being here. Are you going to be at VMworld? You going to get a session this year?
Yes, I had a couple last year. Probably one or two this year too. And of course, guess what it's going to be on?
I don't know. Parking meters, I'm sure. Yeah, great. So if you want to meet him in person, tell him you listened to you heard him on the show. That's always good for us and good for him. You'll be at VMworld. Content calendar is going to come out sometime in early July, I think, and so you'll be there. So you can go meet him in person, say hello to him. He's a cool guy, and thanks for being on the show and doing the work. It's tedious work, so I appreciate the guys that are in security. I'm kind of on the other side of the fence where I just want to go hack something up and deploy it. And apparently no one cares about me, so I don't get hacked that often. But for the guys that are running enterprises, you're absolutely critical to get that done and get the story out and make people aware of it. So appreciate you doing that work.
Oh, no problem at all. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, we're at the top of the hour. We will be on again next week. I think we're booked up until mid-July. So thanks for everybody being on the chat. And we do have to do the end of show barbecue report. Let's see. This week's barbecue from Virtual Security is from Mexico, barbecued goat, a.k.a. Carburrito. So I've never had it. I managed to make barbecue chicken this weekend, so it was pretty good.
How quickly could I get barbecued goat from right now?
That is
right
interesting.
Now. I don't know.
I've had curry goat.
Yeah, we all have had curry goat because that's just you got to do that.
Low and slow.
Right. Yeah, but barbecue goat. There you go. Probably dark meat, probably with lots of sugar, some kind of. Different types of barbecue, right? We got the Texas barbecue, which uses a lot of sauce. The barbecue down in Santa Maria, mid California, tends to not use any sauce, just rubs. So I wonder which that is. Who knows? Barbecue, anything? Barbecue goat? Is it a rub or a sauce? Yeah, it could be.
So the barbecue goat I've had has always been done with a sauce.
With a sauce. There you go.
Either
Nice.
that or you do it plain with nothing on it, and it's closer to smoked goat.
Smoked goat. Where did you get that? In Mexico?
No, in Kansas.
Kansas.
Yes.
Goat in Kansas. There you go. All right.
We have a lot of goats in Kansas, surprisingly.
All right, guys. Thanks for being on the show. That's it for the barbecue report, and we will be here again next week. Until then, have a great week.
Lunchtime.
Hitting the big red stop button now.
Thanks.